And the egg timer now begins. Welcome to Mind Like Me's Egg Timer Hour. I'm Brandon Vanderpool, or Bondo. Joining me today are a couple familiar faces. Sugar Dave Chaltis. Say hello, Dave.
Hello.
Gary Fuzz Massey here too.
Present.
Today we'll sit and chat with a very special young gentleman, founder of Funny Little Boxes and maker of the highly successful 1991 and Skeleton Key guitar pedals. Please welcome to episode number 5 of the Egg Timer Hour, Mr. Andy Ilgunas. Andy Ilgunas, correct?
Yeah, hello.
Talk about stuff, important stuff. Mind like me's Egg Timer Hour.
And thank you so much for joining us, Andy.
My pleasure.
Very cool to have you.
Yes.
Absolutely. So, Andy, I've got him here. Congratulations,
Excellent.
dude. How did?
Thank you very much.
How blown away are you by the success of your creations?
Completely. I pinch myself. It's ridiculous, really. No one's more surprised than me.
You're in Guitar World and Premier Guitar. Like, there's a lot of talk about those.
Yeah, it's bonkers, really. I don't quite know how it happened. It was, it's the story of the 1991 is kind of well-trodden territory, but it basically started as a drunken challenge from Matt, who runs the Let's Play All YouTube channel.
Right, Matt Webster,
and
yeah.
He just messaged me and said, "Do you reckon you can sort a Pearl Jam pedal?" And because I was equally drunk, I was like, "Yeah." And then I don't know.
Nice.
He was originally talking about, just getting, because at the time I sold like secondhand pedals, and I worked with a few small UK builders. So I knew a lot of people who could do it. But I mean, it was all kind of, I was on the point really of winding Funny Little Boxes up. I was back in full-time employment and I just didn't really have the time for it. But I met Matt and I liked Matt, and then we got to be good friends, and then he sent this through and just something ate away at me, and I just thought, well, I could get someone else to do it, make a clone or whatever. And then I just thought, why not have a crack?
Right.
And
well, was this something that kind of came out of like COVID or something?
it was, so I started Funny Little Boxes in 2020, and it was basically because I lost my job. I was a maths tutor. Teaching functional skills maths to kids who had, for whatever reason, be it through behavioral difficulties, be it through learning needs, kids who failed to get their required, what we call GCSE results, which are these exams you take at 16. And so I was basically teaching the kids that the teachers couldn't teach. And so, like, my background before being a pedal builder was all in working with, like, generally young men with severe behavioural problems and things like that. And I kind of, But I got laid off from this company, and don't get me wrong, they were awful. I didn't really want to carry on working for them, but the timing wasn't great.
It takes a special person to kind of do that work, though.
Well, I don't know, a weird niche to fall into.
Yeah.
But I found myself basically, so this was just before we locked down in this country, and it's like, okay, so I've just lost my job in education, try getting another job in education when all the schools are shut. So it was kind of up shit creek, really. And then I had this collection of wacky effects pedals that I'd been gradually building up over the last sort of 3 years. And it was just like, right, well, you guys have got to go to try and keep the lights on. But I couldn't be bothered dealing with Facebook Marketplace and, is this available? Will you take 20 quid when it's 70 quid? And, and so I thought, you know what, I'll just set up a website and I'll try and make myself look legitimate. And it just kind of weirdly, it just really caught on, just because everyone was at home playing guitar.
And, well, also, I think if you picked a really good thing to try to emulate, because that's a tone I've chased for years, like ever since I could play guitar, like that was the sound that I wanted that's what I wanted to sound like. And that's the sound you wanted Pearl Jam to sound like, was I wish they'd sound like 10 more or something like that, you know? But
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, you're all right. And I mean, in terms of that, all credit has to go to Matt, really, because, he's the one who sort of popped the idea up. And, I think if I'd ended up building a pedal by myself, it wouldn't have been that. It would have been something completely different. So, but the idea just got in my head. And I just thought, as a last, I was in a position where if I went for it and it didn't work out, then whatever, hadn't really lost anything by trying.
Right.
And kind of as it went, I sort of, obviously I was a complete novice coming to it. But because I'd been selling other people's pedals and stuff, I knew the right people to call when I needed help. And we just ended up with this really sort of cool collection of 4 or 5 guys who the idea just really sort of took us all. And it was kind of, we were all just working towards this aim with the idea of, if we sell a few of these, great. If not, we've had good fun. It's been great. And, whatever, we've done it. And so, I mean, I think the initial run was literally 15 pedals.
Wow.
And they sold out in like 3 minutes.
Wow.
And there hadn't really been any build up. I think I'd done a blog post and there was a little thing like Matt's video or whatever hadn't come out yet. And it was like, okay, that's great. And I mean, the weird thing is there was, because it was kind of rushed in order to try and get as close to being around the 30th anniversary of 10 as possible.
Right.
So it all came together in like 5 months. It happened really, really quickly.
Wow. So that was the timeline? Like, oh my God, I've lost my job. And 5 months later, woo!
No. So the losing my job was a bit earlier.
Oh, gotcha.
But
Okay.
in terms of from the idea of the pedal being suggested to the pedal actually existing, that was 5 months.
Okay, gotcha.
So, and those first 15 pedals, they were, if you like, the prototype. There was no time for a prototype. It was kind of like, we just got to really hope this all works first time, and by some miracle it did. And so, there was no prototype or anything. Those first 15 units were the only
running
in
prototype.
existence.
Yeah.
And they were, so, when they sold, like, I didn't have one, Matt didn't have one. Matt did have one. One went to Matt. So really the first run was 14, because one went to Matt. And
Did
and
he
then
take number 10?
I think Matt then did his video, and before I knew it, there was about 1,500 people signed up to a mailing list wanting one. And it was like, all right, I'll go and quit my job then and just do this.
That's awesome.
and that was that. So yeah, I mean, bonkers. I can't get my head around it at all. Like, but I'm not complaining. It's fantastic. It beats teaching.
Well, you get to do something you love finally.
Right. Yeah. What interests me is, partly is there, because I say partly because there are many other nuances that I'd like to get to if we got the time in the hour, but the sound from the 10 album, how that niche sound, you pinpointed that and said that's what I'm going after right there. And how did you conclude that?
So, I mean, that was, if you like, the brief given to it, that it's got to sound like, basically, it has to nail the sound of like the opening chords of Alive. Yeah. So that was it's got to hit that. And then with the 1991, I was kind of really lucky because there's loads of isolated guitar tracks and things for it out there. And so it was really easy to get a really good reference for what, for the sonic profile, if you like.
Yeah.
Okay. So it was really, and that's why, it's a really mid-forward pedal and it's really sparkly in the top end. And there is a fair bit of low end in the pedal, but in terms of when you're using it for that sound, like if you listen to these isolated guitar tracks, even the bass track for 10, it's all top end. It's all there's even Jeff Ament's bass. There's no low end on that thing. It's a really top heavy record. So it was kind of we're really lucky in that to have that, so that I knew kind of instantly what the sonic profile was that was going for. And then it was a kind of thinking of okay, that's the sonic profile. This, and then it's looking a little bit at the gear they use. So this is how they achieved that. And the thing, I describe it as a tube screamer into a JCM 800, but when I say that, I'm just talking about the sonic profile of the sound you achieve in terms of the actual circuitry. It doesn't look like that at all.
It doesn't sound like a tube screamer at all.
Yeah, it's that's just a convenient way for me to describe it, and then lots of people start thinking, oh right, so gain 1's the tube screamer, gain 2's the amplifier, and I normally just say yes because it's just easier than trying to explain it but Do
you want to? I'd love to hear you try and explain it, because I've thought that too. Like, I always thought I preferred the second gain to the first one, but the more I use it, it's like I really like to turn that second gain down and just barely turn up the first side. And
yeah. I mean, weirdly, my favorite setting is both gains turned off and then just put the mids up.
Yeah,
it's like I think it sounds best with the gain turned off. But
you can max the gain out, and it still sounds very clear. Like a lot of Boss pedals, when you crank the gain up, they just sound like chunky, and there's just not a whole lot of the actual guitar kind of coming through. It feels like with the 1991, there's always the guitar tone getting through. Doesn't matter how much gain or.
Yeah, that's kind of I've tried to make that a bit of a signature thing with the pedals. That you keep that clarity of having the guitar coming through and never. You don't want it to turn to mush.
Right.
So, it was quite important, especially with the 1991, that you didn't get that, because, you were saying, look, it's the 10 sound. And, that is, like I said, it's very top end. There's a lot of clarity in that sound. And so it's kind of, you've got to give that clarity to people in the pedal. So in terms of the way the gain controls work, like I say, I explain it as like a tube screamer and a Marshall, but as you'll probably know from fiddling around with it, there isn't one of those gain controls that gives you a tube screamer sound, and there isn't one that gives you a particularly Marshally sound. That's just a good way of describing the sound it's creating. In terms of having those two gain controls, and they just cascade into each other, and it was in the early stages of thinking how to do it. After we got the idea, right, this is the sound it's got to achieve, and then thinking of how to do it. It was actually, I took inspiration from a really shit old 10-watt practice amp that from 1992. And I just saw it, and it just had cascading gain controls. And I mean, the sound wise, nothing like, but it just kind of clicked. It's like, that's the way to do it. It's such a nuanced sound, and kind of, just to give you that extra versatility, I just thought that's the way we'll do it. And I just took it and ran with it. And then some much cleverer people sort of, when I got stuck, stepped in and helped me make it work.
Just from an outside looking in tech part of it, though, and you probably feel the same way, or I'm assuming you, but how, like two potentiometers and some resistors and transistors and stuff like that can get you that target sound where it's like on a PCB and it's in a case and it gets you there. That, to me, that's amazing how you guys have figured that out.
Yeah, and I'm really pleased you said that, because that is the whole thing. And I think that's what kind of separates FLB from other companies in a way, in that as a and this isn't a slight on anyone else, because this is the way the industry works, and and these guys all make great pedals. I love a tube screamer. I've got loads of different variants and stuff, but right. There is that kind of thing of, we'll do our version of a tube screamer, we'll do our version of a big muff or whatever, and you get these brilliant things out of it. And so what they're doing, they're if you like, they're starting with a circuit, and then they're tweaking it to get to put their own individual sound in it. I'm starting with a sound and working backwards to create a piece of gear that gives you that sound. And so in a way, then the kind of all the components and things, they're almost, whereas if you want to recreate a really cool fuzz face or whatever, you've got to have some crazy hard to get germanium transistor or whatever. That kind of goes out of the window with the way I work, because it's a case of, right, I'm starting with that sound and I'm literally just putting basic building blocks together and then just relentlessly tweaking it until I get that sound. And it always starts with a couple of op amps. And then if I haven't, after a week of working with that, if I haven't got what I want, that's when I think about doing something else. But as a general rule, start with a couple of op amps and then end up with the sound.
What exactly is an op amp? Because I know I've heard of op amp pedals, and you proved to me when we talk on Messenger that my perception of what an op amp pedal is not correct.
So it's or more. So op amp just means operational amplifier, and so that is a sequence of components put together which amplify a signal in a certain way, do certain things to a signal, as in amplifying it. So that's what you then, that, if you like, is a description of what, if you hear people talking about a discrete op amp, that's what they're talking about. So the op amps I use technically are what you'd refer to as IC op amps, and so it's all the op amp, all the things that make the op amp put into one tiny little chip, which then you put in and wire up in a certain way. And so that's what I always start with, these 8-pin chips, and they're actually dual op amps. So there's 2 op amps in one, and that's where I always start. I start with a couple of them, and then, like I said, after about a week, if I don't think I'm getting anywhere, then it's time to think, right, do I use a MOSFET? Do I use, a transistor or whatever? But I find those little IC chips, they haven't failed me yet.
That's really cool. So you're just starting from just like a little board, and then you'll do what you think needs done, and then plug it up and see, and then and then
it always starts with a buffered input signal. So I'll build a buffer, and then from there I'll just sort of just go with it, and just, it's that kind of, I suppose it's one of those things where you just have to be willing to put in a fair bit of work for a little while, and then just be willing to say, all right, I might just have to chuck this all out because it's not doing the job, and start again.
Does it ever come down to like the resistor, like you go from a 6400 down to a 4800 or something like that? In theory, I'm just asking, and this is not, I'm not seeking proprietary, because
no. But it is that. It can be that with, say, a resistor, just the slight change in value, or using, slight change in value of one capacitor. It can make all the difference, and it's bizarre, really. It's very easy to believe that kind of thing is kind of a level of snake oil, but it really, that at the end of the day, they're what makes up the circuit, and so that it is going to have an impact when you change that. And I mean, with the skeleton key in particular, that there was so many just such subtle little changes that got made just to, pretty much from the off, that thing was 80% there. And then it was just a series of just these minor, and it was that case of just like, put that resistor in, listen, take it out, swap it for that, listen, and just agonizing, and then just being like, no, okay, it's that one. But then you go and do another part of it, and that affects the whole thing, and you're like, oh, right, no, so that has to change. So, I mean, it was the skeleton key was a real fiddly. That was a lot of just fiddling around with little.
Let me ask this then. Like, okay, so you start out, you had that 80% benchmark. How many hours did it take of just experimentation to get to that sound you wanted, that product? You would I mean, just a guess.
I mean, if I had it up, so the whole, I've actually got somewhere, I've got like a log I wrote daily of when I was building it, just to keep me on task. And it was actually it really helped me focus at the time, because my head was all over the place, and it really helped me knuckle down and focus on it. That initial, that getting it to 80% there kind of, so that, if you like, say that was like a week's work. And then, because it was meant to be working on something else, that kind of sat for a couple of months, really, just at the point where it was, while I was trying to work on other stuff. Gave up on the other stuff and finally said to Matt, right, I've got something, I'm bringing it over. And that was where I was kind of expecting him to sort of say, all right, yeah, there's something we can work with there, but it needs this doing, this doing, this doing. And I just kind of
So you
took
need
it to him and said,
that second input to go headlong into it that last little bit to get
yeah.
there.
And
Okay.
ultimately, you know, if you like, Matt is my clout of, if you like, is you know, he's the guy with the audience. He's the guy who, you know, essentially has that magic touch that he can nail that tone. So it's his ears, you know, a circuit is done when Matt's ears sign off on it, basically. When I give it to him,
he's the QA
and
guy.
he said, yeah, don't do any more on that. That's there. That's when I know it's in the bag.
Do you know what his process is on that? Is he sitting and recording himself and listening back to it on recording?
No, I sit on his floor while he sits and plays.
Really?
And then he'll tell me more gain, more treble, and we'll just sit there and we'll do it normally, because he's still got quite a demanding full-time job. And so normally I'll come round and it'll be his lunch break. And I'll sit on his floor and he'll sit in his chair and play, and sort of we'll hope that within sort of 45 minutes that we've at least got a direction on, you know, where, and then I'll go away.
To me, that's amazing, because to accomplish something like that, it sounds like a power weekend. Like, okay, let's come hang out in the garage for 12 hours at a time, you know. So
Absolutely.
I mean, it would be great if we could do that. If we could do that, it'd be great, just to have a bit of freedom.
I honestly thought maybe you guys were sitting around recording it, listening back, because I couldn't hear. I really heard that Queen's tone whenever I recorded something and listened back to the recording. I was like, oh yeah, I hear it now. Like I can hear that. Like it's just that's like the sonic profile that you were talking about. Did you work backwards from that too? Like start with, I imagine you probably listened to Rated R and maybe Lullabies more than anything.
Well, that was like I said. So I was working on something else, and it was something I'd been working on a long time. Something that was meant to be the follow-up to the 1991. I'd been working on it with my friend Mark from Sound Lad Liverpool, who helped me out with the 1991. And we did all this work, and it was ridiculously complicated, and we were kind of 90% there with it. And then I got cancer, unfortunately, and so I had to was out of the game for 3 months. And trying to come back to that ridiculously complicated circuit after that, I was like, I don't know my arse from my elbow here. And Mark was the same. And so I spent a few months, probably a couple of months, just trying to persevere with this and just banging my head against the wall, you know, really. And I just had this hammering sound in my head, and it was just constant. And it was just like there was just something in my head that was just hammering away. And I got so fed up with this thing I was with, and I just put it aside. And I went back to, and I just said, right, I'm just going to build something just for the sake of building something, just so you know, because I needed to feel like I could get something right again, because this was just going wrong constantly.
Right.
I had this hammering in my head, and like I said, I started to build a buffer, and then went from there, and then kind of plugged it in, and just sort of just started playing a couple of power chords, and I was like, all right, that's Regular John by Queens of the Stone Age, and it was like, okay. And I'm just going to roll with that now. And I just kind of, like I said, went along with it for about a week. Said to Matt, I think I might have something Queens of the Stone Age-y. Put it away to go back to work on the thing that wasn't going right at all. And then when I finally decided to just stop that completely, and said to Matt, yeah, I'm bringing the Queens of the Stone Age thing round. And then, you know, I was there saying, I think I've got something in the ballpark. And then he was like, well, it's there. It just needs so, you know, that essentially the main part of that came about in a week, just because I had this noise in my head.
That's awesome. You needed so to get frustrated with something and just got to have fun with something. And then like this thing. Now, was this supposed to be, maybe I dreamed this, but I don't know if it was from talking to you or maybe reading something. Was this supposed to be like a dual pedal or something, like two?
So originally, when I first put it together, and when I had that, I was like, oh, that's Regular John, and started going along with it. I kind of thought in my head, oh, well, that would work cool as essentially two pedals. Mm-hmm. Well, no, two circuits in one pedal, if you like, that you could foot switch between.
Right.
One giving you the really woolly sort of fuzzy aspect of things, and then one giving you a really wiry overdrive that you could, essentially, so giving you the sort of the core parts of the Queens of the Stone Age tone.
Right.
And I was just seeing it as two separate things. And then when I took it over to Matt, he was like, "Don't do that. It's all there." Mm-hmm. He said, "It's all there in that pedal in those three knobs. So why complicate things?" And it was like, I mean, that was music to my ears because I've got less work to do.
Yeah.
Right.
So I wasn't going to complain about that. And so, then it was just that case of, like I say, take a resistor out here, put a new one in there, swap capacitors here, just do slight little, and then, and it just, and then it sort of finally came together, I don't know, probably around end of April last year, maybe a little bit later, and then it was and then the production of it just took 10 times longer than expected, but it was all worth it.
Speaking
I imagine it's a very incredible feeling when you actually get done. I couldn't imagine what you go. I'm sure, like, oh my God, it's finished.
Eureka moment.
Bloody relief. And then you get that. You're like, yes, it's done. And then you get the production process, and then you just get the thing when you're about to officially release it, and you're just shitting yourself because you're just like, God, I hope people like this. God, I hope they get it. And I was so convinced they weren't going to get it because, it's essentially me in a position of saying, so, you think that really high gain tone that Queens of the Stone Age have. Well, actually, they don't. It's actually, and kind of as you're telling all these people out there who, some of whom have dedicated outrageous amounts of time to like documenting and trying to achieve these tones. And then you're essentially going in there and just saying, actually, it's just all in here. And it, that has the, whereas I think generally people think, yeah, fucking great. It definitely has the potential to really piss people off and really like, no, you can't tell me that.
Did you read what Troy Van Leeuwen said about it? Did you see that quote?
Yeah, I found it really funny. We sent him 2 pedals.
Did you? He said, that's cute. Queens of the Box, I know. That's cute.
But you know what? I couldn't ask for anything more really than that. The fact he'd heard of it was amazing.
Yeah.
The fact he'd heard of it was, the idea that
a bit of a nod in itself. Yeah.
And it was just like, and it's fine, and I always said the best thing that could ever happen with the 1991 is if like Eddie Vedder circa 1993 got hold of it and did like an Instagram post of him setting it on fire or something and saying, "You're trying to put my heart in this box of pink shit." Like that would be the best thing ever. But he's all old and boring now, so he wouldn't.
I've not seen. I don't think I've seen any of the guys in Pearl Jam even comment about the 1991. But they
and they won't. They know about it. Well, I know Eddie Vedder knows about it because when he did his solo tour. It must have been in 2022 when he did his solo. There was one out there with one of the guitar techs.
Okay.
Oh, there you
go. He knows
awesome.
it exists. Whether he, Pearl Jam of all bands are never going to be a band that like wants to reach out and talk to you about these things. They're kind of, and that's fine. I don't expect it, and I don't ever to expect to hear. If Troy Van Leeuwen's ever played those pedals, that it's one of those things. You send it out and you say whatever. Right.
Well, it's more like a tip of the hat. Like thanks for the inspiration.
Yeah, it's just the fact they've even heard of it is mind blowing. Yeah, so it's what will be. If it turns up on one of their pedal boards, then job done. But I don't. This
pedal makes me sound like me again.
I don't expect to see.
So, what was like the? So with the 91, you pinpointed a specific point in Pearl Jam's career and their sonic profile. I really like that term, sonic profile. That's really nice. Why didn't you do like a Queens of the Stone Age? Rated R era,
I think just because they're the sort of the cornerstones of their sound kind of echo throughout all their back catalogue, kind of. So to pin it down to one thing, and also Queens of the Stone Age don't necessarily have, if you like, or certainly not in the UK. I know obviously they've got big songs, but if you like, they don't have a mega hit in the terms of like Alive in the way that Pearl Jam. You know,
Right.
they've got lots of awesome songs, but
No one
you know,
knows would be the one probably comparable to that.
and so kind of when there was this kind of thing between Matt and me that okay. I think I looked up their sort of 5 biggest hit singles, like, and it was No One Knows, Go With the Flow, and a couple of, and it was like, okay, so we need to make sure we can get that sound out of them, to get the sound of them out there, and then everything else is about. And it just from the off, it was just such a more wide range. It just had that scope for, you know, pretty much their entire back catalogue, you know, or at least those core rhythm tone aspects of it. And so there wasn't necessarily a need to pin it down to, you know, one song that it had to sort of reflect. And it was, you know, No One Knows was always going to be the lead song off in terms of Matt doing his demo. You know, that's always going to be your opening shot, because if you can have that and people hear it and go, yeah, all right, that's done that, then that's job done from a marketing perspective. But in terms of, you know, what was on offer, and you know how it was always more of a saying, yeah, this will cover a whole range of it, rather than saying it's that song and everything else is a bonus.
That's cool. Yeah, that makes sense. Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it really does. And you know, I think personally, me as a musician, and like you said earlier, I'm sure there's millions of other guitarists and whatnot. Even if it's a band, like I may not, like Cake. I don't own a Cake CD, but I'm like, how does that dude get that guitar sound? And I go down the rabbit hole of, you know, here's what guitar he uses, here's what amp he uses. He uses a Rat, you know. So that's why I just think all of this is just fascinating, and why it is such a success, because it's a good product and it meets the needs of these musicians, what they want. How do I sound like this person I admire?
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's the ultimate thing of it. It's putting that in your hands, and you know, at no point are we trying to say this is the be all and end all. You know, there's always like with the Skeleton Key, certain things, you know, you're going to want to add a fuzz to it, you're going to want to add an octave pedal to it. For certain things, it's going to have to, you know, and even with the 1991, you might want to put a clon or something before it or after it, you know, as a solo boost, or to give it a bit more, you know. So they all kind of, it works into that, but it's essentially saying, you know, if you want that sound, you know, stop spending tons of money. That'll get you there, you know, to a point that, you know, you're satisfied. This will get you there, and it'll make you happy, and it won't cost you the earth. And that's it, really.
It's funny you said that in the same sentence as put a clone in front of it.
Yeah. Okay. A clone.
A clone. Yeah. We'd all love it. Did you ever think about putting some goop over your circuit so that, you know? Yeah, that was something they did on the clone. I don't know if Gary and Dave knew that. But so you talked about production.
I have to say though, I've got to give props to Mr. JHS and that not a clone like that, you know, from a market, that thing's genius from the off. And the fact in that, I think they include a tube of goop, don't they? And I mean, that he's nailed that. You know, I wish I'd thought of that. That's genius idea.
Do you have a clone?
No, I don't. See, I've played solid state amps for so long. A clone isn't really any use in a solid state amp, because when you're playing something that's super clean with high headroom anyway, the last thing you need is a pedal that's high headroom and super clean, you know? So
that's funny.
I never really took to the clone sound, but I mean, I'm sure it's great.
Right. That reminds me of you did a YouTube video. It's probably about in 2020 or something. Kind of, it's almost like your mission statement for Funny Little Boxes, and it's been so long since I've watched it, so maybe I'm confusing it with something else. But you were talking about the pedals that you like to play with, and you're like, this is a crappy pedal, and this is a crappy pedal. It doesn't mean that it sounds bad. It's just
yeah, no, that's exactly what it. Yeah, I think I know. Yeah, I know exactly what. Yeah, and it is kind of. because that's when I was selling off a collection of weird pedals that a lot of people, that in many cases had bad reputations. But it's like, well, actually strip all that bollocks away and just actually play it. And it's really rare you'll ever plug in a pedal that you won't find a sound you like. And it's happened to me twice I bought 2 pedals from, and I won't name the company because I don't want to come across like I'm brand bashing. I'm not. They just weren't for me. They just, I couldn't find, but they're from a really quite high-end brand. And I managed to find them at a reasonable price. And I thought, go on then, I'll treat myself. Everyone raves the hell out of it. And I just couldn't get on with them, just did not like that. But that's pretty much the only occasion where I found a pedal I didn't like, really. There's something to like in pretty much everything I've ever plugged into. Some pedals are like, I used to do a lot of the old Dan Electro pedals.
I was getting ready to mention Dan Electro.
And I love them. I love them. They're the thing that got me started. I love them. And the weirder, the wacky ones, but there are some in that, like in the food, like some of them have very limited redeeming features. You might find, but some of them are not.
Like
they're not great, but they're fun. They're fun.
Yep. I bought one. I had the Dan Electro Spring King, and all it does is the sound of the tube, and I love it.
Yeah, great. I never got a hold of the Spring King, but at one point I had all of the little plastic Food Series pedals.
Oh yeah,
I had all of them.
Me too.
They were the thing that got me started. Basically, when I had one pedal for years. The first pedal I ever got was the Dan Electro Milkshake Chorus, and that was the only pedal I owned for years and years and years and years.
And then powder blue.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had the same one.
yeah. And then for whatever, I'd never thought about it. Like I'd barely even played the thing. And I was like an acoustic singer-songwriter for years and years, so I didn't really play electric guitar for a long time. And then I basically had like a minor mini breakdown and just found myself looking at this Dan Electro Milkshake and just said, I'm going to try and collect all of these. And then I went out and did it, and then I just got into so it started off as just trying to collect those Dan Electro pedals, and that's where the term funny little boxes came from, because my wife, I just started stacking them up along the top of my piano, and then my wife just one day was like, what are all those funny little boxes? And it just, and that's where the term comes from.
That's cool.
Yeah, so, give her a nod. Long-suffering, bless her.
Is there a way to hear you playing out in cyberspace, like Spotify or
if
YouTube or anything?
You can find on YouTube, there is a Funny Little Boxes YouTube channel. It is quite irrelevant now, because it's obviously from when I was selling weird secondhand pedals and other people's pedals, and it was all done in I haven't done a video since Christmas Eve 2020. I feel really bad when people subscribe to my channel, because it's basically dead. And I did this weird series of videos called Beer in a Chat, and it was when I got whatever pedals I was trying to sell via the website, and I got a beer, and I basically chatted shit to myself, for about an hour or so, and played terrible music, but weirdly people quite liked it, and I sold quite a few pedals off them. But yeah, I haven't, I wouldn't know how to bring that back now, because I don't sell those pedals anymore. But it was a fun outlet when I had it.
You may have been on something marketing there, but with just being from Appalachia, anytime you throw beer or Patriot or something like that in a name, it kind of takes off, So.
I think that's what it was. I think people were quite happy to watch this idiot getting pissed and trying to play guitar. It was people found it funny.
Hey, whatever works.
So if you don't mind me
did
asking,
strange things to us all.
if you don't mind me asking, so is this something you were trained in? Like me and Brandon both have friends who went to DeVry, and they know how to work on electronics and whatnot through training. I've also got friends who learned how to do it through necessity, because they couldn't afford to take their amp to an amp shop, so they'd take it apart.
Yeah, not at all. I still consider myself at best a passionate amateur that just got really lucky. And like I said, I can't overstate the importance of the help I got from Simon Andrews at JSA Effects and Mark Dunn at SoundLad Liverpool. You know, like I said, they were the people who, when I got completely stuck, you know, that I knew to call and who helped me out. And, you know, their names are on the PCB of the 1991 as fellow designers, because, you know, they helped me. That, you know, it's, you know, they put in a lot of work with it. And, you know, I cannot overstate, you know, the importance of them in helping me. And so essentially after we did the 1991, we had this kind of fluke success. Mark and I got together, and essentially I kind of paid Mark for intensive one-on-one tuition. The idea was we were going to build the ridiculously complicated pedal I was talking about that I abandoned. You know, that was kind of us, and that was him basically teaching me to do this properly, if you like. And so that was very much, you know, okay, although that didn't come to fruition, I would never have been able to do the skeleton key if I hadn't gone through that process with him. And so, you know, I had that. So, you know, I had nothing, and then I had this incredibly intensive tuition with him, and now, you know, I'm able to kind of stand on my own 2 feet with it. But, you know, I wouldn't have got anywhere if I hadn't had those guys to help me out. So, you know, I'm just been very lucky that I've known. It's come down to really just knowing the right people.
Right.
Who,
I
you know,
think
and
you're shortchanging yourself. I don't think you're. I mean, there's some luck comes into it, but I imagine there's a lot of, you know, it's preparation. Success is preparation, plus, you know, opportunity.
Well, the way I look at it is, you know, the amount of creative things I've sort of put my hand to over the years that have come to nothing. You know, music, drama, trying to write a book, all those things, and then kind of this is the one thing so it's all been up there. It's all been up there, and it just needed the right form to come out in. And weirdly, pedals is where it's come out. So, you know, and I'm not complaining because it's, you know,
you never know where it's going to happen. I mean, Dave and I, we record music all the time. We've been in bands, and nobody listens to our stuff, but we still keep doing it. And, you know, I've started a YouTube channel, and it's slowly building, slowly gaining some steam. Nowhere near like what Matt does, but he's certainly an inspiration. Like years ago when I would watch and guitar players on YouTube, they're a dime a dozen, man.
Yeah.
And just watching him, it's been a, you know,
Matt would tell you just to keep doing what you're doing, because that's what he did. He just started off and just consistently kind of found his formula and just stuck with it and just did it for years, and it just built up from there. So, you know, just keep going with it, and you never know when, you know, you're going to somehow get lucky and you're going to make that. You know, I equate the 1991 to, you know, having like a number one hit out of nowhere. It's just that, you know, you made the thing that everybody wanted, and you made it at the right time, and it just, you know, that
I
is
honestly
just pure
think
luck.
I think this pedal would have done whatever it was going to do, even if the world wasn't in lockdown, even if it wasn't the 30th anniversary of 10. I think this pedal still would have done that. That 10 guitar tone is highly coveted, and it's probably just they didn't use a lot of pedals back then, and they didn't.
No, I mean, it was a tube screamer into a Marshall. That's what it was.
They didn't have these big boards and things like that. You didn't see them using a lot of effects until even after Versus.
You know,
might be a
some of the
Roto-Vibe on there or
shoegaze bands that were around, they'd have big pedal boards, but your mainstream rock acts, not at all.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, like I said, I just feel incredibly fortunate to have, you know,
with
done it, and the fact that people like it, and that still blows my mind. The idea that every time an order comes in, the idea that someone wants to buy this thing that I've made, that's just great. It's, you know, just incredibly grateful for it.
I guess, how do you feel whenever I don't know if you've read a comment like this, but I've read it before. Have you seen someone say something to the effect of it has replaced the tube screamer on my board or something like that? Are you like?
I've heard it, and people have said it a lot, and they say it about really high end pedals, and that, you know, that does just kind of, that you can't help but be deliriously happy with that. I had a guy message me the other day about the skeleton key, and he said he listed off like 5 pedals that it's made redundant on his board, and it's just like, they're good pedals. I really like those pedals, and it's like, you know, if you're saying that that's knocked them off the board, then that is very hard not to feel incredibly pleased with yourself when you hear that.
Right.
So,
I've got
That's
to ask.
exactly why it's not luck.
I've got to ask, how many emails or whatever do you get saying you should make and then
Uh,
blank?
Quite a few, not as many as I but yeah, I get quite a
Yeah,
few,
I figured.
What's the number one?
and sometimes they're good ideas, and so a lot of them though. Sometimes it's kind of like, well, the 1991 will do that.
Right.
So it's kind of like it's like just turn the knob to the left, and turn that down, turn this up, and it'll probably do it. Like Foo Fighters come up a lot, but it's kind of like, apart from stuff off the first album where you probably want a rat pedal,
Right.
just use the 91. It's
Yeah.
like it's all in there. Nirvana gets suggested a huge amount, and it's kind of, again, there could be something there maybe for the more like the in utero kind of sounds, that bit more abrasive and stuff, but other stuff, just use the 91. It's kind of, it's there.
That in utero stuff, like I just acquired this.
Oh,
I have I own a pawn shop. I don't know if you knew that or not, but I had wanted one of these ever since I knew that Kurt used this. And at the time they were discontinued, and they were like $400 or something crazy on eBay, and I never got one. And then they'd reissued them, and I don't know if this is a reissue or an original. It's probably a reissue, but they're still kind of expensive. And this thing come in one day, and I was like, "Ooh, is that what I think it is? That
Mine.
is what I think it is." But
is there a downstream sound that that's on your radar? Because I heard right, you have a pedal that's ready for production, but I mean, beyond that, is there stuff that you're kind of?
yeah, yeah. It's kind of, this year's all wrapped up in terms of what's coming out, and probably it's probably going to be too ambitious. There's another one so there'll definitely be 2 pedals out this year, and if we were really ambitious, could maybe get 3 out, but I don't think we'd manage to get 3 out. So an early release next year as well is kind of all. That's all in terms of 2 of those pedals. Basically, the work is basically done. They're pretty much ready to go, and then another one. I need to get started on that, but that should be ready in sort of this time next year. So we've got there's a lot of stuff in the pipeline.
Nice.
That's
Very
awesome.
cool. Very cool.
Just got to have the time to do it.
Right.
I was telling these guys last night, I was like, I hope he gives us the exclusive on the next pedal, but I'm sure Matt gets to do all that. That's fine.
Yes, that is kind of his role in these things. So
Exactly.
I can't really rob him of it.
Oh, come on. Give the guy this podcast is going to get 7 views.
Tens of views.
Literally tens of views, Andy.
What I will say is it's going to be, we're kind of really going for gold with the next pet. It's
nice.
So it's going to be a bit more feature packed. We're kind of aiming for it kind of really ticking every box it possibly can, and still delivering it for £99, so that we're kind of aiming for, provided we nail it and we get it right, kind of trying to aim for it being a case of, well, why would you buy any other of this type of pedal when this is out there? So that's, we're gunning for it with number 3, and it'll either be a disaster or it'll be brilliant, and we'll just see.
Can I ask, is it another gain pedal though?
Yeah, so it is a gain pedal, but so it'll be a dual foot switch number, and so it'll have, we're aiming for, vast versatility whilst completely nailing the tones in question, and then just giving you as much else as possible. So
Right.
I'm really excited about it. Matt and I were both very excited about number 3.
I'm excited about it too, and I don't know. You shared a clue with me. May I share whatever you gave me? Like one little hint. Is
yeah,
it all right?
go for it. Yeah.
It was. I think you'd said it was a more obvious successor to the 1991.
Yeah, I would see it as, if you're looking at, all right, they did this with the 1991. Next step, if you were looking in that, what would you go for? That would be, that to me, it's certainly a more logical follow-up than jumping over to Queens of the Stone Age.
Right.
But
So it's the 1992.
Leave that as a working title.
There you go. That is awesome. So we got about 10 more minutes left. Whenever the timer goes off, we're done. Is there anything you got coming up? I'm not sure how quick I can get this out, but I'll try to get it out as quick as possible. Is there anything you want to talk about or throw out there that you got going on?
Just not, like I said, number 3, it's on the way. Sign up to the mailing list so that you get whatever sneak peeks are there.
What's the email address for that?
So if you just go to funnylittleboxes.co.uk and click on mailing list sign up, and then just put your details in, and that'll be there. And then you'll get, I'm so bloody busy. I always think, I'll send out a monthly update. It's always like 4 monthlies because I'm too busy to sit down and write the email.
Right. I don't know how old you are, but doesn't it seem like just like it'll be 2 or 3 months go by, and then it's just like, well, that was 2 weeks ago. It's like, no, that was 3 months ago.
It's like the fact that it's the end of March already. I'm like, what the fuck's happened? Like,
the first quarter's done, man. First quarter of 24, it's over.
Yep.
First part of this year was really all preparation for the big UK guitar show in this country. That was 4 weeks ago now, and I'm like, well, how did that happen? It's like, been there, done that, done the biggest event of the year, and now it's like, what do I do with myself now? But,
Make more
design
pedals.
more pedals, build more pedals.
Like whenever you make these pedals, are you making all of these yourself? Who helps you do this? Like
At the minute, no one. So
it's
for the
just
last,
all you built this all by yourself. That's
so when
awesome.
the 1991 first came out, so Mark Dunn from Soundlad, basically, he made me an offer to build the original ones. He was so enthusiastic about the thing, and he sort of said, yeah, I'll build them for you for this. And the price he offered was it was like, yep, I'll take you up on that, because I'd have been stupid not to. Mm-hmm. So the first 1,000 or so were built by Mark, and then he'd send them to me, and I would put the knobs on, because he didn't like putting the knobs on because they're a fucking pain in the ass.
I can imagine.
There was
look
something
great
about the knobs, like you had different knobs on earlier ones or something, and I never knew.
So it's the same design, but basically we've had them made at 3 different facilities. So the 15, the first 15, they have different ones on, and it's the same design, but they're a bit of a rougher cut, and it's like a sort of matte look. And then I think the one you've got, the darker ones. Mm-hmm. So they were the sort of second run ones. And then when I moved to have them made in the UK, the ones that are on them now are the really shiny silver ones. Mm-hmm. But yeah, they are, they look awesome, but they're a pain in the ass. And so, yeah, Mark didn't like putting them on. So I put all the knobs on them, and then, and package them up and stuff. And then we reached a point where Mark, because he makes his own pedals, he makes great stuff. And he sort of got in touch with me and said, oh, I think I kind of need to focus on my own stuff. And I said, well, actually, that's good timing, because I want to be more hands-on with the 1991. And so we just reached a happy agreement of just everything. And since then, every 1991 and every skeleton key has just been built entirely by me.
Insane. How long does it take you to do just one?
So a 1991. Sorry, my dog's howling. You don't shut up. It's all right. It's all right. So a 91 is like double the work of a skeleton key. So can easily do 25 skeleton keys in a day. But if you're looking at a day's work, 91 would be sort of 10 maybe. They take so much longer. They're a real fun, but they're worth it.
They are worth it, dude. I love these pedals.
Go
ahead, Dave.
I think I like the way they look. I think they're aesthetically gorgeous. So is that you too? Is that you like? So
the 1991 kind of, with all these things, me and Matt kind of thrash out and he generally has the better ideas, and we generally go with that. But so with the 1991, it was my friend John Stewart who had a little company called Stomp Slaps. I don't know if he even does anything with them anymore, if they're still active. But he, was essentially like an amateur graphic designer in his own time, and so he did the artwork for the 91. He's done the artwork for pedal number 3 that'll be coming up. And then obviously the Skeleton Key is done by Boneface, who, works with Queens of the Stone Age. So that was a real
awesome. How the hell did y'all get in touch with him?
Again, all credit to Matt. He just tracked him down and worked. We assumed he was based out in the States, but it turned out he was UK based, and we just sent him an email and he was like, yeah, all right, I'll do it. And so,
it's amazing how some things are like just that easy to do. Like, hey, Andy, you want to come on?
Like, yeah, if you pay me, I'll do it. So he was like, all right, yeah, let's do it.
Very nice.
You had another pedal that you just sold at the guitar show, the green one,
the ill-fated Punk Spirit. Yeah.
I would love to hear what that thing sounds like, because it's based on a band that I didn't really know about.
Yeah, so very much a British concern, a band called The Levellers. And to be honest, I mean, the idea of that, they're a folk rock band. The idea of them having a pedal with their sound in it is a bit weird. But essentially it was it's the sound of just like an orange amp running really hot. It's that kind of thing. To be honest, I made it way lairier than anything you'd find on a Levellers record, just because I got a bit overexcited and I thought, why not? The only trouble was I tried to be all like clever, and because it was called Punk Spirit and I was trying to embody that DIY punk spirit, I was like, yeah, I'll build it on Vero and stuff. And that was a disaster, because Vero builds are awful and just horrendous. And I built all these things, and then and they didn't really work. And it's kind of like, well, I don't know what I've done. And so basically for that guitar show, I managed to get a working like demo unit, and then got people, if they wanted one, to give an email address and said I'll be in touch. And then sadly, I've never been in touch, because since I just haven't had the time to sort these things out. So it's kind of the great lost Funny Little Boxes pedal. But I mean, it will see the light of day. It's just a matter of having the time to go. But it was meant as a kind of quick flash in the pan, do it for that show and that's it done. But then obviously that didn't happen, and so it's become a slight millstone around my neck, because I'm like, I really want to get it out there, because it's my little passion project. But at the same time, it's like, is it worth it for such niche and limited appeal? But it will see the light of day properly. It's just a matter of when.
That's amazing. Yeah, I would love to check out that pedal also. Dude, I will check out all the pedals. I mean, I've got a problem, especially with gain pedals. It's ridiculous. I have too many.
It's fine. It's people like you with that problem that keep me in business. So,
And
stay addicted, man. Stay addicted. Don't get help. You don't need help.
It doesn't matter how many, I know that what is on my amp, I've got a Fender Twin. I know it sounds amazing, but I'm always looking for something else. It's just like, I gotta plug in this pedal and try this.
So am I. Like, God, I still buy overdrive. I make overdrive pedals, but I still buy them.
Yeah.
I've got.
Is the Tube Screamer your favorite overdrive pedal, or what is your favorite overdrive pedal?
I do. I have a lot of versions of Tube Screamers. I like Tube Screamers. I really like. I don't know. He's a British guy, but he's based out in Philadelphia now. Champion Lecky, I don't know if you've heard of him. I love he does like these dirty boost pedals, and I've got like 3 different versions of this. I love them. I'll basically buy whatever he makes, really. And I just like the old Dan Electro circuits, like their old fuzz circuits. I love them.
Yes.
So yeah, I love them. I think the most recent one I bought was the Earthquaker Devices. They reissued the White Light, their version of like a DoD 250. And that's fantastic. Right. That's great.
What's the DoD 250? What is that pedal?
It's the DoD. It's quite a famous old.
I'm trying to Google it real quick. Oh yeah, it's that overdrive pedal. I know what you're talking
Yeah.
about. The yellow
Yeah,
one.
and
Yeah.
like loads of companies have done their own version of it, but it's a great little thing.
Oh,
But yeah,
yeah.
I really like the EQD white light. That's a great pedal.
All right. Well, you just named something else I'm going to have to check out.
I will say I've known Brandon a long time. I've never seen as excited about a piece of gear as the 1991. He was like,
Dude,
Oh,
you can
well,
see
that
back
makes
there,
me very
that's-
happy.
That little case back there is just, and you can see the night. No, it's back there. But that is just all pedals back there in that cabinet. I'm sure Andy might have a couple more. Oh, dudes, we've got 10 seconds left to go in our egg timer hour.
All right.
This has been the funnest one
Again,
we've
it's
done
fast
yet.
for Newcastle.
yes.
This has been
So-
great. Thanks ever so much for having me along.
He's
Oh,
not gonna get to
absolutely, dude.
Yeah, it's been
Really
it.
cool. AO, let's go. Thank you so much for joining us. Maybe we have you back another time. I know you're a busy guy, but good gracious, we would love to
I'd
have
love
you
it. This
again.
has been really good fun.
Yeah, it has been.
I
We
really thought
appreciate
we'd
it.
have more time to kind of like nerd out on like music and Pearl Jam and stuff like that. But
Well-
we'll stay in touch and we'll work something else out.
Definitely. All right then.
It's
You all
the Egg
take
Timer
care.
Hour.
Talk about stuff and